Welcome to Forging a Life podcast with Coach Christine Clark. Forging a Life is a Sunglow transformation production aired on Transformation Talk Radio and all your favorite podcast platforms. If you own a business, have a side hustle, desire to make the leap into self-employment, or just love human interest stories, Forging a Life podcast is for you. Christine Clark is an internationally certified transformational life coach. She is the coach for your entrepreneurial life, and these are her people. Jump into the fire with those forging success on their own terms with courage, tenacity, and resilience. These are men and women you could easily meet on the street in your own community. Gain wisdom, insight, knowledge, and inspiration each episode as these business owners get transparent with Coach Christine Clark, sharing their passions, challenges, and origin stories. This is Forging a Life.
Hello, this is Coach Christine Clark, and this is Forging a Life. My guest today is Ron Janssen, the owner of Janssen Machine, which has been in business since 1993. Ron is a new friend that I met while I was visiting Wisconsin. Tell me, Ron, where is your shop? Because I don't even know exactly where in Illinois it is.
Yeah, actually, it's just north of Rockford, Illinois.
Okay.
Just south of the border from Wisconsin, not too far from where you came to visit and I first met you. So
Yeah. And I'm just delighted to have you with me today, Ron. We had the opportunity to just hang out and get to know each other a little bit. It was lovely. And I'm just want to share what you created in your business with the people that are going to hear this podcast. So let's give everybody a little background. Tell us just a little bit about who you are as a person. Anything you want to share is perfectly wonderful.
okay, that sounds great, Christine. No, it was great to meet you over the summer, and just want to say it's an honor to be on your show. So yeah, going back to where everything started, I guess I'll go a little bit farther back. I grew up on a family farm. My father was very mechanically inclined, so I was about 8 years old when he sold the farm and decided to retire. But he was so much bored with that, so he decided to start a farm repair shop. So he did that for several years. And when I was in high school, I started in a VOTEC school. It was a really nice program, and started a machine shop program in Sterling, Illinois, and I had 800 plus hours of hands-on machining time there.
Oh, wow.
That was
That's a lot.
Yeah. It was very fun, but I was very intrigued by machining, and that's what kind of caught my interest. And my dad was also excited about that too, because in his business after farming, he worked on a lot of the farmers' equipment around here. And he just always wished that he could know how to machine parts. So that was kind of interesting for him to see that I went into that field before he passed. So anyhow, I started working in the machine shops when I was in high school. I worked in 2 machine shops in Freeport, Illinois, and not too far from Rockford. And after I graduated high school, I saw an ad in the paper for a job at Barber Coleman Company, an old large company in Rockford that was hiring for a prototype machinist. So I applied, was fortunate enough to get the job there. So that's when I really started to go in that direction.
Tell me about what a prototype machinist is. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, I was fortunate enough to work in that position. Prototyping is a lot of one-offs, the first very new part that's ever thought of. So I was working with engineers at Barber Coleman, where it was in the small motor division, small electric motors. And they would come up with an idea for a new part, something that has never been made before. So I would work in that area and we would machine all of the new ideas or new parts that they had an idea for. So it was really interesting. And that's where I really found my interest in machining, other than just working in a machine shop doing the same thing every day, day in
Yeah,
and day
because
out. So
when I think of machining, I think of more production work where you're making a part that's going to go in something else, and you make 50, 100, or however many thousands of those.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's what I did when I was in high school. I did that kind of work.
right. So you
But
got
after-
into the prototyping with
Mm.
them.
Mm.
And then how long did you stay there?
I stayed at Barber Coleman for 8 years. In that time frame, I met Jeff, my business partner now. He was actually my boss towards the end of my time there, and I learned a lot from him too, as far as machining and ideas on how to do things differently. Especially if you're just making one piece, you have to make it right the first time. A lot of that kind of work was intriguing to me, and I just really a lot of interest in it because it's not the same thing every day, day in and day
Right.
out. So yeah, actually, when Barber Coleman was sold, you could kind of see the writing on the wall. They were up for sale. I was at a point where I didn't know if I was going to want to try to find another job or try to do this on my own. So while I was at Barber Coleman, there was a gentleman, his name was George Janssen at Continental Machine, and we would outsource work to him while I was working there at Barber Coleman. And he offered me time to work in his shop so I wouldn't have to spend the money to invest in equipment. And I was able to rent machine time from him just to see if I could try this out as a business. So that was really nice that I could do that. His agreement with me was that he would just want 20% of my profits, which was okay. Let's just see if this works out. George was such a great guy. He started out the same way. He worked at National Lock in Rockford, Illinois, and he went through a similar situation like me, where that company was sold, and he had to do that same thing, and he worked machines in another man's shop for a while before he started out on his own.
So that was a model that he had done himself and wanted to offer it to you. When did the idea of running your own shop occur?
Yeah, I think it came from my parents. I mean, just growing up on the farm, and then my dad still continued to work, and he had his own business after he sold the farm. Just seeing that when I was growing up. But also, I think I was working in a larger company.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't comfortable there. Just the aspects of working in a large company, the politics, all that. It was something that I was really leaning towards getting away from. So that's where I think it was always in the back of my mind. But when time came and Barber Coleman was sold, moved the operations out of town, it's like, okay, I either got one chance to do this, I'm going to go for it or not. And fortunately it worked out. The engineers that I did work for at Barber Coleman had gone off to other companies, and they remembered the work that I did. So I almost immediately had an instant customer base from those engineers that I worked with, which was perfect timing to jump into it.
Right. That was what I was going to ask you, is that where'd you find those first customers to get yourself off the ground? They already knew you because of the work you'd been doing.
Absolutely.
That is cool. So really, you had people that recognized your talent work and were happy to come and contract directly with you to do prototypes. And you had this gentleman that says, hey, you can borrow shop time, give me 20%. And so you don't have to put in, the money. Like, tell me about some of the machines that are in your shop currently. I mean, what kind of stuff do you have?
Yeah, it's mostly CNC equipment or manual machinery. Almost anything can be made with a milling machine or a lathe or a grinder. Um, those are the three basic machines that I have.
Okay.
I worked at when I worked at Continental Machine, I worked there for about a year and a half, and I had to work around his schedule. So I sometimes have to come in at nights when he wasn't there working. But once I knew I could do this and it took off and I had enough customers, then that's when I took my 401k that I had invested with Barbara Coleman for those 8 years I was there, and bought a lathe, a mill, and a grinder.
Okay.
And it was interesting because the exact space that I worked in at Barbara Coleman in Rockford was vacant, and they were turning that into an incubator building for small business. So I rented that same space where I worked at Barbara Coleman
Wow.
for the past 8 years.
Right.
So I moved 3 machines into that area, and
Okay.
it almost felt like home again without all the politics around me.
Right. You gotta be your
Right.
own person and do the same
Mhm.
thing.
And it worked out good. That building was a nice place to have my business at, because they still had heat treating facilities, plating facilities. I couldn't even get my raw material from them, and I really didn't have to go anywhere to get it. It was all there, so it was really
Okay.
nice.
And those were
So I worked there.
other businesses that were in that same building, incubator building. They were just doing different things.
Yeah, in fact, Barbara Coleman, their main um, bread and butter was textile, so they built textile machinery, which they
Okay.
built for years and years and years. They, over time, a lot of those machines were sent overseas to Indonesia or China, but years and years ago, a lot of the textile was down south because the cotton fields were there. You know, the logistics and when everything was back in the day made in America, a lot of the textile machinery was sent down south, because that's where they would make all the clothing and all the fabrics.
Right.
So that
Right.
was still there. That part of the business was still there and still in operation. So they still had their steel facilities there. They had their heat treating and plating there too. So it was so convenient. I just was able to plug right into that area and go right to work. So it was nice.
Nice. Yeah. So, you got started, you said, actually kind of started in 1993 before you left Barbara Coleman.
Mhm.
And then how long did you do the rent space before you stepped in and bought your own machines to make your business a separate thing?
Yeah. So I was at the old Barbara Coleman building since let's see, 94 95 is when I moved in there.
Yeah.
Actually, during that time, Jeff, my business partner now, he went and worked at other shops, and then he just gave me a call out of the blue and just said, "Hey, how's it going? Want to see your shop? I heard your business." And he came on board in 1999,
Okay.
and he has a good background in milling, 3D machining. So it was a really good compliment with him and us working together. So it was about a year with him there, and then we moved out of the old Barbara Coleman building and moved into Loves Park, and that's just like a suburb of Rockford, just north of there.
Okay. Tell me about
Mhm.
building, employee base or a team.
Sure, sure. Yeah, actually, I worked by myself about 3 years, and then doing prototype work that kind of leads into production work, right? So you make one, two, all of a sudden they like it, it works, it takes off, they want you to make more. And they actually came into a situation where these parts that I prototyped, they were asking for hundreds and thousands of them. So I actually hired a semi-retired lady from Barbara Coleman that was really good at production work. So she was looking for work part-time. but not too much because it would affect her Social Security. So she started out part-time and helping me with the production side of work, and she was great. She did a lot of that kind of work for me, so I could stay focused on the prototyping and tooling work that I do. And
So
that was
this
my
was
first.
this was a gal that was retired, and she's actually at the machines making stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because she told me she was bored sitting at home, so she wanted
Right.
something to do. And so, of course, I never knew her when I worked at Barber Coleman, but I was introduced to her from an engineer that I was making these parts for, and he knew her and said, "Hey, you're working too many late nights running my parts. You need to get a hold of Lois and see if she can work for you, because she's looking for something to do." And she actually worked for me for almost 12 years.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah.
That's fun. That's fun.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But building on that, I guess, to answer your question, as it worked out, we hired Jeff's son. He started out from high school, and he's turned into a really excellent machinist too, doing prototyping and all kinds of work to this day. Hired a lot of other people along the way, come and gone, but we found that it was best to just bring people in, train them with the way we want it, the way we would like to have parts made, versus in some cases, other situations were like a subcontractor where it just didn't work out. So we just rather hire them and show them what we do and train them in that aspect instead of subbing out the work. So
Yeah.
we try to bring it in. So it's been good. We were up to 11 employees. Right now we're at 7.
So what do you look for in somebody, especially if you want to bring them in and train them in your style and how you like things to be operated? So when you're hiring, how do you figure that out? What do you look for?
It's funny because a lot of the thing is we don't really advertise. It's more word of mouth. It's almost like that with our business too. Every employee that we have right now was usually another employee saying, "Hey, so and so's looking for work and they're pretty good, or they work at this shop. They're tired of working there. They'd love to work here." So I really never put an ad in the paper for anyone to have an
Wow.
interview, other than just the fact of word of mouth. And usually someone will recommend them and say, "Hey, they're pretty good, so we might want to take a look and see what they can do." And depending on what we have at the time, it's always worked out for whatever situation we've had. So I don't really advertise too much. It was funny because when I first started my business, I thought, I'm going to put an ad in the yellow pages, right? And that was the biggest waste of money. A lot of even the business, a lot of the business is word of mouth and its reputation. So,
Right. That's cool. And you've been doing that for over 26 years, 27 years now. So what is it that you provide as an employer that people want to come work for you?
Well, I think it's more of a, I don't want to say a laid back environment, but it's not, like structured like larger company is. It's more hands-on. It's work at your own pace, but if you have a job that you're working on from start to finish, the avenues, and we show them the avenues to take to make the parts, and they have more freedom there. It's just more freedom working in our shop because we're a small shop, and we can offer that because we don't have the structure of a larger company. I guess I don't mean to say anything bad about a large company structure. I just know that I've worked in one, and that's where I just thought I'm going to make it a little bit different for
Right.
any of my employees,
Because you talked about wanting to get away from the politics.
Mhm.
And so tell me can you describe what politics is and then what that isn't in your shop?
Right, right. Well, I saw it mostly at Barbara Coleman, where just rumors or people talking about this or that, and then jealousy or whatever it is. It just doesn't. It's just the larger amount of employees are around you working with. They're just try to undermine you. Um, you know, maybe the part that I made didn't work, but it wasn't any fault of my own workmanship. But yet I could be, held accountable for it because this was not right, or just anything like could be in that aspect. But um, I just
Yeah.
I just didn't like. I wasn't used to the structure, the you know this time, this time, and this time. This is my day. I go to work. I do this, and at this time of day I do this, and then it just I was never that kind of a person. Never had that mentality. So
Yeah.
it was tough working there, but I will say the best thing that I've ever learned working at Barbara Coleman was how big companies operate. And I think that's what was a key for me to deal with those large companies. So, even when I was sending work out to Continental Machine and knowing how the purchase order system works, I know how the approval system works. You have to quote the jobs. I've pretty much started out off the ground running in that aspect. So I was able to deal with those larger companies. 3 of the engineers that I worked with at Barbara Coleman went on to other companies, and it took a little while, but eventually within, a couple of years, I was dealing with all 3 of those engineers again, and they worked at larger companies. So I had to go through the purchasing department and dealing with the buyers and quoting, and knowing that, I think it really helped me working there, so I can continue that into that type of work. Because like I said, we do a lot of work for big companies, but the thing is, I can still take walk-ins. Like someone can walk in and a broken part on their lawnmower, and can't find a part for their old car or something, and we can do that too, which I like. I enjoy that. But
That's
the
cool.
bread and butter of our business is, the bread and butter of our business is the larger companies and doing the work with the engineers and prototypes that sometimes leads into production work.
Right.
Or prototypes is our bread and butter, and that's what we always something new. It's never
Yeah.
the same thing.
Right. So what's been like the coolest project or the weirdest project that you've done, as far as creating something or making something?
Yeah. It was recently, about, I think it was a couple years ago, we were um, working on a project. It was kind of top secret, who knows, but I can say at least a few things about it. I'm not supposed to say, but it was for a submarine drone, and it was a project for the Navy, and it was a complicated assembly where we had to almost assemble a octagon shaped magnet into an octagon shaped steel part, and no one's ever done that before. So to line it up was be tough. So we did a heat shrink operation, so where we cool the magnet under dry ice and keep it really cold, and then heat up the housing and warm that up. And the only way we could figure out how to do it is to put it in our CNC machine, because it can act like a robot. It can actually move, and you can write a program to do that. So we were able to do that with success the first time. Very
Wow.
expensive parts.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was a job I couldn't even really quote, because very expensive parts, obviously. And I almost didn't want to do it, but this was my engineering manager that worked at Barbara Coleman back at Barbara Coleman when I quit and went off to do my own thing. Bill Yaden, he started his own engineering firm, and he started his own company. And I've been doing work for him ever since as well. And
Okay.
he was tied in with this project and came in with this idea for this magnet, but the shape of it was almost tough to do, and we were able to do that, and it was
So I'm guessing that the dry eye, the cooling of the one part and the heating of the other part was
project.
to be able to put them together because the tolerances were
Mhm.
just like, you know,
Yeah, very tight.
hairs.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And you figure, and then you had to have something mechanical hold on to it to put it because you couldn't physically handle it with your hands.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was too hot, and then it was too cold. You couldn't touch it. So we used our
Right.
CNC machine to do the assembly work. But those are the kinds of things that I think was, even when I was younger, is what's always intrigued me, is to do something from scratch or something different that's never been done before. So that was probably the highlight so far of
That's
my
pulling a
career.
rabbit out of the hat. That's amazing.
Mhm.
And as you're telling me
Indeed.
this, because I am not mechanical person, I'm thinking, how would you even know to think of changing the temperature of the two parts to make it work? I mean, that's
That was,
really creative.
yeah, that was actually brainstormed between Bill and us, and we were talking about it. So we brainstormed it together. But
Cool.
yeah,
So
it kind of
yeah.
it kind of reminds me of when you were talking about Howard with his things in his shop, and with his forging press, and sometimes you have to make something that's not out there to make it work.
Right. Right. Yeah, I have to make a
Hmm.
part to make a part.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so what's been some of the stuff that you've really, really enjoyed the most personally for you in this business?
um I think just seeing the progression of things, with everything. It's been a lot of ups and downs. Obviously, went through several recessions, and you know, even this last round with the pandemic, it's just really impacted our business a lot. But all in all, it all comes down to, I think, the hard work and uh, the reputation is the key. I think, as far as for any business, really, it's been that. I think it's fulfilling to know that you actually have people that remember who you are, even if they work at this company or that company. They'll go somewhere else, and then they'll still give you a call because they're there for you, and they want you to be working on their parts, because they respect the quality and the that
Right.
type of work. So that's really how we've built our customer base, is from a lot of engineers that go to work at other companies. So yeah, I guess looking back on everything like that, just seeing the progression of everything is interesting, and it's fun.
Yeah, that's cool. That is really cool. A business, as an entrepreneur, that's just business.
Mhm.
You're gonna have these times where everything's clicking, the projects are coming in, things are being completed, people like what you're doing, it's just going great. And then there's these times where something goes wrong, somebody's not satisfied, or there was miscommunication about what they wanted. And then, like you said, then the economy goes up and down. In our business, Howard was making pocket knives in, I think it was 1993. And he had like 8 people that bought everything he made. And it was like pocket jewelry, and these guys had lots of money, and it was they were buying, he finished one and they bought it, and these really beautiful little pocket knives. And then in the fall, there was this hiccup in the stock market. And all at once, every single one of them stopped buying. Nobody was buying it anymore. And it was like, okay, now what?
Mhm.
Because we've been doing
Yeah.
this thing that's been so steady and so guaranteed, for several years. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden we have to, there's got to be a plan B, or we got to punt or do something, because those buyers ain't buying anymore.
Yeah. Yep. I know the feeling well. It's just the downs are for sure. Um, in fact, that's more recently what we went through with aerospace, because that being down about 50% across the board.
Right. Yeah, because when we had a conversation before, you, when we were cutting back to 40 hours to take the sting off a little bit, you were doing 4 10-hour days. So everybody got 3-day weekends.
Yes, correct.
I
Yep.
thought that
So
was
that,
that was a great solution.
oh yeah, everyone loved it, especially over the summer, having 3-day weekends. We did that. I mean, it was great. And going back to work on Fridays, it came with a little bit of friction, because everyone's used to working,
Right. Yeah.
4-day
Right.
weeks,
Hmm.
but everyone's still grateful though that busy, because definitely that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah,
when you were at
that
your
was
peak, I mean, what kind of hours was everybody putting in?
50 to 55. Yeah,
Okay.
so we would work Monday through Friday and half a day on Saturdays, and that was pretty much the norm for most of the history of Janssen Machine.
Yeah. Um, with the employees, tell me what the cool part of having employees is.
I think mostly to see them grow. I mean, learn and see where they started and now where they're at. Everyone there is a craftsman, and they just have a unique way of doing things in their own way. And I think that's what I find the most enjoyable, is to see their progress and where they started and where they are now, where they become. So that to me is what it is.
Cool. What's the tough part of having employees?
Yeah, there's a lot of things with the healthcare. We went through that with Obamacare, and we pay for pretty much most of our employees' healthcare, and we still do to this day. But the Obamacare, when that started, all the insurance companies raised their prices, and
Right.
it tripled. Yeah, it tripled for us. So we were,
Jiminy Christmas.
yeah. So,
Mhm.
I tell Jeff, it's it's one of those things, you want to keep offering this, or do you want to, have that as have everyone pay their own insurance? I mean, I just think that's a big benefit to have, for someone to be covered with healthcare, and we still continue to do that.
Yeah. So you pay 100% of the healthcare for the people?
Yeah, mostly. Each employee pays $10 a week, and for dependents, it's $40 a week. So
Yeah.
we have to have them pay, for some reason or some law. That our agent says that they started doing this during Obamacare, but they have to pay for some portion of it at some amount. So we just picked $10, but yeah, we pay for most of it.
Yeah.
But that was a big difference with that increase, and with the rates going up. I mean, I look at how much machinery we could have bought over the years if we didn't have that extra expense. So
Right.
that
Mhm.
makes it tough. Makes it tough to compete. It really does. But
Yeah,
and
because when you price things, I'm running this in my head, because you
Mhm.
bid jobs or bid, give somebody an idea about what it's cost for you to prototype, create something for them. And
Yeah.
you have to pay for the employees' time, you have to pay for the parts, you have to pay for the overhead, you have to pay for the health insurance, and you should pay yourself somewhere in there.
Right.
So tell me about the skill of being able to bid a job.
Yeah, every bid is different. Some are pretty straightforward, where you're just quoting a part off a drawing, then you know the material costs and this and that and what it's going to take to make it. There's other projects that might be more in depth. Might be a big project that would take a lot more time to figure that out. Believe it or not, I also change my quote based on who I'm dealing with. And I don't mean to be selective by saying that, but there's some customers that don't pay very well. And I kind of have to take that into consideration as well. Customers that pay us quickly are going to get a better price, because I can't afford to be a bank, so
Absolutely. Yeah. That's
yeah.
cool.
So
I coach entrepreneurs. I work with a lot of people, Ron, and
mhm,
getting people to be able to do what is solid in business for themselves and not capitulate, or I mean, just what you said, your customer, you know who's going to pay. And for the
mhm,
people that you want you to be at the bank, time value of money says they need to pay more because you're not going to get it now. And to be
exactly.
able to have that mindset that this is business, this is not anything to be ashamed of, this doesn't make me a bad person, this is what
Right.
needs to be done because I have to do right by my business, by my employees.
Exactly.
And
So true.
and sometimes that's really difficult for some people to grasp because they want to be liked, because they want to be whatever, or they'll underbid a job because they want it. And it's like, then then they have to do it and then they run out of money. But
Yeah.
to be able to separate those things, that I don't know, what you tell me, what's the perspective? Because I think that there's a piece that you have to put the priority on your business, yourself, and your employees if you have them.
Yeah. Going back to what you just said, I have a story that I can tell briefly.
Lovely.
It was a customer that was just being very demanding and just always asking for their parts right away. Our worst paying customer, they didn't pay their bills good. They had inspectors that would inspect our work and just trying to create work for themselves and trying to say the parts are bad and they're not. And we were always babysitting our customer. So Jeff and I decided we sit down and had a few beers and talked about it and said, you know what, let's just stop doing their work. What are they going to do, right? So we sent them a letter and said, effective immediately, we're no longer doing work. We have this much inventory of your parts on the shelf, and you decide if you want to pay for them or not. So right away, we received a phone call from the buyer saying, you can't do that to us. And I said, yes, we can. And it was tough. It was really tough. I mean, you're talking, dealing with a lot of parts that could just be not sold,
Right,
but
that
after
they
the
could
time,
decide to run away and then you're stuck with the parts that you've made and no
yeah,
paycheck for them, right?
right. But after all the dust settled and a few months went by, I thought this is the best thing we've ever done because it freed up our time with that customer. We have more time to do work for customers that are receptive and love our work and pay us well.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to take on more business because we weren't fighting fires with this customer. And I guess what I want to say, if it comes down to that, I mean, if you only have one customer that doesn't pay well, then I guess you're stuck with them. But if you have customers that are treating you well and you have some that aren't, business is a two-way street. And
Absolutely.
that was something I learned. It was actually the best feeling I've ever had. It was the first time I fired a customer, but it was the right move.
Right. Yeah. And that,
Mhm.
that takes cojones to be able to look that in the face and say, no, this is not, what is this costing me? Well, it's costing me stress, it's costing me time. And to be able to say this isn't worth it for us to do that at any price. And
Yeah,
it's scary. Yeah, that's a courageous move to be able to cut that person out. Um,
yeah,
and then to see what happened was all that time, that space, and then it got filled by people that love you and people that pay you, and you're able to take on more
right.
jobs. And that's the
Yeah,
beautiful part that is past the tough decision is what can
mm,
show up and come into that space when you are willing to make those tough calls. Yeah.
yeah. Even the employees were happier because that all trickles down. Because these hot jobs that would come in and somebody was working on a project and have to stop what they're doing to do this,
Right.
and just to get rid of that outside noise with this customer was huge. And we've done that probably 2 or 3 times since then.
Right. Yeah. And the first time's the
But I
hardest.
learned from it. Right,
Right.
right.
Yeah. And then you learn it's like, oh, hey, this is actually okay.
Mm,
I can do this. Not only can I survive, but I can thrive by making those
exactly.
calls. Right. Right.
Hmm.
Love that story. Thank you for sharing that, Ron. Um, what else has been a really cool learning experience uh, doing what you're doing?
Um, I just enjoy seeing our customers also grow. When I mentioned that my engineering manager, um, he started dealing with me after Barbara Coleman. I dealt with him back and forth for ever since he's been in business. He passed away about 5 years ago, and his guy, his main engineer, Brad Frastraglio, he took over the business. So I kind of helped him, give him some pointers off and on when he was struggling with finances and this and that. But just be reciprocal with that too. Even to this day, even though Bill was not around, his guy took it over and he's sending us work, and we have a good rapport together. And I just enjoy that. It's rewarding to be able to share that, my experiences with him, and kind of help out wherever I can in that aspect as well.
Nice. Kind of passing it along from what somebody offered you when you got started.
Right.
Yeah. I like the community that you have, because what I'm hearing is that there's a lot of integrity and there's a lot of um, good ethics, people doing good work, people trusting others to do good work, and um, camaraderie, people helping each other out. It's just, which is refreshing. It's really nice to hear about, because as you've shared about the
Yeah.
different, people that remembered you and knew that you did quality work, and so they brought, their projects to you. Um, Someone that gave you space to get
Hmm.
started, you're helping somebody else. That's solid. That's a really great culture within the industry in your area. I, is what I'm
Hmm.
hearing.
Yeah, it's been rewarding in that aspect. That's what I enjoy the most, other than the day-to-day things that I do, but working on new projects, which I enjoy. But being able to help out if I can in that regard is rewarding as well, for sure.
Yeah, nice. So, what does the future look like from right now?
Yeah, it's looking like aerospace is going to start to picking up again. companies that we are dealing with or have been dealing with have been hiring people back. So they seem to be, quote activity has been increasing. So that's good. I hope it continues. We need it to.
Yeah.
The as far as everything else, we'll look and see what we need to get for equipment. There's some machinery that we probably should replace at some point, but we just want to get back to some steady business here again soon, which haven't seen that for a while. So looking forward to that.
Yeah.
So Jeff and I, we started our own company of our own products about 5-8 years ago, I would say. It's some of our own ideas of tools that we use in our own shop, and came up with some recycling ideas too. So we have another company on the side that we are trying to get that going, and it's been selling some, but nothing like we would see, but it's there. And it's kind of like the thing where, you do all these parts for other people because they have their own product. So we kind of thought it'd be kind of nice to have our own product.
Right.
So instead of working for everyone else that has their own products, we came up with a few products of our own and started a website and have some things going there. So see what
kinds of
happens with
things
that.
what kinds of products are you making for that side business?
We started out with tooling that we make ourselves. Certain types of vice jaws that we use for clamping in the machines, collet stop wrenches, those kinds of things that we use on the lathes. We started out with those kinds of things and started to grow on that. Recycling, we have a wire stripper. We're working on another one that strips insulation off a wire. So trying to get those off the ground. The one wire stripper that we do have on our website is been in, I think we've been selling that for about 2 or 3 years, but it's slowly starting to ramp up and slowly see sales pick up a little bit there.
Who's the intended customers for some of those things?
With our industrial products, it's more people like ourselves that have machine shops,
Right.
like equipment that's more heavy duty, that's more durable, like rather than you can buy out of the catalog. So that's what we've been working on there. And we have those products out there, the ones that last longer. So we kind of made our own that are stronger and that kind of thing. So machine shops would be like customers for that. Wire strippers, I'm not sure, maybe people that want to strip wire to get the copper out of the wire
Right.
for recycling purposes, because you can get more money for the copper when it's stripped with the insulation off of it
Right.
than with it being on there. So we have a product that does that. So we did that probably about 5 or 6 years ago and just made about three production runs of them so far, and it sells. It's just not, it's not steady where we could say, oh, we're gonna do this full time. But what's nice about it is when we're slow, which we have been, we can use those products and kind of build up inventory and have our employees working, at least when we're not getting work from other customers.
Right.
So
yeah.
it's been nice to have that too.
Right. Multiple, just adding on to your income streams, doing different things. So very cool. Very
Absolutely.
cool. Expanding. Awesome. Wow. This has been great, Ron. I appreciate your time. I'm just fascinated by everything that you do. This is cool. This is fun.
Yeah. It's a pleasure to be talking to you. And I checked out everything with your station, and it looks like it was very interesting. So I feel honored to be on your show.
Yeah, well, thank you. Glad to have you. Anything you want to say or add or share as we wrap up?
I guess just for anyone that's starting out in business, just go with your gut, what feels right, and put in the time to do it, and I think your reputation is key. Try to do whatever it is, if it's a product or a service, just try to do a good job of it, and just try to make sure that your customers will remember you, and that'll probably bring you more
Yeah.
business in the future.
Yeah. Do quality work, do caliber, and people
Absolutely.
will come back. Yeah. The reputation part is earned,
Mhm.
and don't be afraid of doing the work to do that, because it pays dividends.
Right. And that's
Yeah.
where the word of mouth comes in, because somebody tells
Absolutely.
someone else,
Mhm.
so
Yeah. Right.
that's how
That's
it's worked for me. And I think that's the key for any business, no matter what it is, if it's a machine shop or anything, is if you do good work, the word of mouth will take care of itself for you.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Good advice. Excellent advice. Yeah. Thank you, Ron. It has been a pleasure. Tell people how they can find you.
Yeah. So our website is janssenmachineinc.com. So it's all one word, Janssen Machine Inc. Inc.com. Kind of shows pictures of what we do, our equipment, our
Okay. So the website's a solid place to go to see what you're about and get all the contact information. How can people contact you if
correct.
they want to, Ron?
There's a thing on our website that says to contact us,
Mhm.
and then they could use that, or they can just call our number. It's 815-877-9901 is our direct phone number. Direct email other than through the website is janssenmachine@comcast.net. So,
Cool.
you know,
Thank you very much. This has been a pleasure.
well, thanks, Christine. It has been great. And I just think you're doing a great job with everything that you do. I think that's awesome.
Well, I appreciate that. I received that, Ron. Thank you. Thank you very much. This is Coach Christine Clark. This has been another episode of Forging a Life podcast. My guest today was Ron Janssen of Janssen Machine. You can find him on the web at www.janssenmachineinc.com.